King bitch! It wasn't the words that woke her up, nor the splash of spit on her face. No, it was the punch that did the job. Skunk caught her one on her right cheek, sending her head cracking against the front passenger window. Shit, she was in trouble. Her left hand pulled hard on the door handle as her right punched the seatbelt release. She threw herself out onto gravel. It was covered by a layer of snow, too thin to cushion her fall, but cold enough to help clear her head. She rolled away, then jumped up to her feet. Skunk was already out of the driver's seat, stomping around the car towards her with a face like thunder. Her mobile was in his left hand, and that big, sharp army knife of his was in his right. "Lover, what's the matter?" she asked, using her little girl-lost voice. It usually worked, but not this time. "Lover! Drop the act, you two-faced bitch! It was you what nicked my gear. Nicked it and sold it to Dev. If McTeague finds me, I'm a dead man, and it's all down to you." She backed away, glancing around as she tried to get her bearings. Skunk's crappy old BMW was parked at an angle in a lay-by next to a narrow lane with no road markings. Lay-by? It was just a patch of more or less flat ground, scattered with gravel chippings and hemmed in by bare trees and bushes. She had no idea where they were. The middle of nowhere by the looks. Nothing to see but hills and trees and snow. Making her eyes as big as possible, she shook her head, setting her long, bleached hair swaying. "You've got it all wrong, lover. I wouldn't." Skunk stopped and waved her own phone at her. "Don't bother lying. I've seen the texts, you and Dev. He's your lover boy, is he? You double-crossing slag. You two stitched me up. Well, he won't want you by the time I'm done with you." She took another step back. Even if she could dodge past him, there was no way she could outrun him. Not in those shoes. And there was no point trying to reason with him. He had that look in his eyes. Skunk was a right nasty piece of work when he was in this mood. He'd be letting his knife do the talking, right or wrong. As it happened, he was right. Well, sort of. Dev, her lover boy. She wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. But yeah, he had cut her a 50-50 deal on Skunk's gear if she stole it for him. It had been dead easy, too. It meant Skunk was in big trouble with McTeague now, of course, but that was his problem, not hers. Her big mistake had been sticking around thinking the half-wit would never work out it was her. But he must have guessed after all. Took her for a drive, waited till she was asleep, parked up miles from anywhere and helped himself to her phone. He must have watched her put her pin in one time and memorized it. Devious bastard. Skunk threw down the phone and moved closer, his pug-ugly face all red and blotchy. She took another step back and felt twigs prickling her through her t-shirt. She looked around, desperate for anything that might help her. That was when she noticed a rustling in the bushes off to her left, just a couple of yards away from Skunk. He noticed it too. He stopped and looked over, careful to keep an eye on her. Some bloke emerged from the undergrowth. He was in his late 30s, stocky and a bit simple-looking. He was wearing a tatty camouflage jacket and muddy trousers tucked into black wellies. A woolly hat was pulled down to just above his thick eyebrows. The bloke looked from Skunk to her and back. "Oh," he said. "Do one, pal," snarled Skunk. "No, don't go," she pleaded. "He'll kill me." The man looked down at the knife in Skunk's hand. "It's wrong to scare a lady," he said. The words came slowly and in a strong accent. Oh, great, she thought. My life depends on the village idiot. Skunk turned to face the bloke and raised his blade. "I said do one, you retard. Keep your nose out or you'll get hurt. Got that?" The man gulped, staring at the knife. But then he shook his head. "Not going." She tensed up, ready to move. If Skunk started on the guy, she'd get her chance. Sure, he'd make mincemeat of the half-wit, and dead quick too, but she would still be able to make a run for it. Get away down the road, then dive into the woods and hide. Skunk had no staying power. If he couldn't find her inside 10 minutes, he'd give up, get back in the car and worry about putting some more distance between himself and McTeague. Yeah, true, that would leave her freezing cold and lost in the back of beyond. But she'd worry about that problem when she got to it. Skunk lunged with the knife. The man tried to dodge back, but he was too slow. She saw the blade enter his side through his army coat. He yelled and stumbled. Skunk pulled the knife out, laughing like a nutter, and got ready for another go. What happened next took her by surprise, but not as much as it did Skunk. The man straightened up and swung his right fist fast. Really fast. Next instant, Skunk was on the ground. His knife dropped, blood all over his face. "You hurt me," said the man, like he needed to explain himself. Skunk was a hard case, but only when the odds were in his favor. Suddenly they weren't, and he didn't want to know any more. He got up and backed off, holding his nose, which was gushing blood like a tap. He was swearing and shouting, but he scampered back to the BMW, sharpish all the same. He got in, slammed the door shut, gunned the engine, and was gone. Things were working out for her. Skunk gone, and some bloke on hand to get her back to civilization. But then the man let go of his side and helped up a hand covered in blood, and it occurred to her that he might go and die before he could help her. "You okay, mister?" she asked. She picked up her phone. Skunk had thrown it hard enough to smash it up pretty bad. It was knackered. "You got a place in here, yeah?" she asked. "With a phone?" He was still standing, looking at his hand. "I think I should go home," he said. "Yeah, sounds a plan, mate. I'll help you. It's near, yeah?" He didn't answer. Instead, he clamped his left hand back against his side and turned, pushing through the bare branches, back the way he had come. "This way," he muttered. They followed a muddy little path all the way down the hill into the bottom of a narrow valley full of trees. She kept an eye on him. There was a lot of red leaking between his fingers, a big dark stain spreading out across his coat from the stab wound. She guessed things weren't looking too good for the guy. He'd gone dead pale and stumbled a couple of times. Once she had to catch him and hold him up. "Oh, that was dumb," she thought. "That's my DNA and stuff all over a stabbing victim." A couple of 100 yards further on, the path came out from the trees and into a clearing. Right there in the middle of it was an old stone cottage with a slate roof, pretty much surrounded by a tall hedge with a garden gate in it. The man pushed the gate open and lurched up a paved path to the front door. He fumbled with the doorknob. The door wasn't locked, and went inside with her following. It was a dingy hole of a place, with little square windows that didn't let in much of the gloomy winter daylight. It was cluttered with antique junk and smelled musty. The man slumped onto an ancient-looking sofa with a groan. "You got a phone?" she asked, looking around the room and not seeing one. "You know, a landline." "A telephone?" he asked. His voice sounded weak. "No telephone. And no electric." Christ, this is like the olden days, she thought. Like from the 1990s or something. "All right, have you got a neighbour near here then?" she tried. "One who has got a phone?" The man shook his head. "No one near. Not for miles." Shit. She didn't like the idea of calling an ambulance, 'cause as soon as it was obvious it was a stab wound, that would bring the pigs as well. But the guy needed to live long enough to tell someone it wasn't her that offed him. "I'm cold," said the man, and pulled a wool blanket from the back of the sofa, wrapping it around him as best he could. He looked like shit. "I'm gonna go," she said. "Go and get help, yeah? Where's the nearest town?" She had no intention of going for help. It would never come in time in any case. Right now she just needed to get away. Get away, go and get her cut of the money from Dev, then disappear. Yeah, that was what she would do. "I'm gonna be all right," he said, talking even slower than before. "Yeah, right, mate. Look, I'm off now, yeah? Just go to the plot for me and I'll be all right." "Hey, the plot? What plot?" "Round the side of the house, on the right. Go to the plot and see what's growing there. Bring me the pod, and I'll be all right." "Yeah, sure. Whatever." She gave the place a quick once-over to check if there was nothing worth nicking. Nothing other than an old parka coat that she threw on to stave off the cold. Then she headed off out of the front door. Time to make herself scarce. Only something had made her curious about this plot. It would only take a moment after all. She turned right and went around the side of the cottage, just to see what she would find. What she found was a raised bed of earth. A circular wall, about 2 foot high, maybe 10 foot across, enclosed a patch of black soil, and from out of it there grew some sort of weird plant. She didn't know much about plants. Her granddad used to take her to his allotment when she was little, but that was before she found the old fool's rainy-day kitty in a biscuit tin and nicked every penny. They'd not talked since. He was probably dead now, the old bastard. All the same, she knew there was something funny about this plant. It had no leaves for a start. No flowers either. It was just a clump of tall, thick, green stalks winding up out of the black earth. And at the top of the tallest stalk, making it bend down under the weight, there was a big, fat seed pod, like what peas come in, but much, much bigger. She reached over and pulled the pod off its stalk. Still overcome by curiosity, she took it back into the cottage and stood before the dying bloke, holding it out to him. "I got your pod, mate. What are you going to do with it?" He smiled weakly but said nothing. He reached up and took the pod from her, his hand trembling. He held it close and with some difficulty squeezed it. It popped open. She made a face. It was pretty gross inside, with squishy white seeds all coated in pale yellow gunk. But the bloke looked pleased as anything. He picked out the seeds and ate them like he was popping pills. Next he pulled back the blanket, unzipped his coat and pulled his shirt up. He took a handful of the gunk and smeared it around where he had been stabbed. Then he settled back down under the blanket with a happy sigh and a face that looked like he'd just shot up on some seriously good shit. Even in the dull light she could see some colour come back to his cheeks. "I'm gonna be all right," he muttered, then fell asleep. And somehow she knew he was telling the truth. She knew that something really, really weird was happening, something she wanted to know more about. She sat down in a big, dusty armchair, and as the grey afternoon light faded, nodded off, watching him. When she woke up, the room was warm and bright. There was a fire burning in an iron stove, and lots of lamps and candles had been lit. The bloke, who had been at death's door not so long ago, walked in from the kitchen carrying 2 steaming mugs. He gave one to her and sat down on the sofa. "Made you a tea," he said. "Ta, you're okay then?" He nodded and took a slurp from his mug. "The plot provided," he said. "That pod thing, you mean? What was in it?" He smiled. "What I needed. The plot gives me what I need. It always has. Thank you for fetching the pod for me." She shrugged. "Thanks for dealing with Skunk for me." "Skunk?" "The guy with the knife." "Oh, yeah. He were a bad man." "You're not wrong, mate." She looked out of the window. "Christ, dark already?" "Oh, yes," he replied. "It's night time, you see." He nodded. "No shit. Look, mister, thing is, I don't have no place to go." He nodded again. "Well," he said slowly, "you could stay." "Yeah? First you fight off Skunk, then you give me a roof over my head. You're a right hero, you are." "Well," he said again. He looked down at the floor and turned a shade of red. "You look nice. You're pretty." She looked at his stupid, hopeful face and saw an opportunity. Yeah, I am." There was a spare room. It was clean and surprisingly free of junk, unlike the rest of the place. He made bacon and eggs for breakfast next morning, and they talked some more. He said he liked her name. She said the same about his. She was lying. What kind of a stupid name is Thaddeus? After eating, she went out to look at the plot again. The stalks had already died back, lying brown and withered under a coating of frost. She stared at them and knew deep inside that there was something about that plot of earth, something special, something profitable. The second night at the cottage brought heavy snow that stayed in the hills for weeks. Being holed up there nearly drove her mad, having to pass hour after hour with that retard and his puppy dog eyes, obliged to wear his shirts and the least hideous of his dear departed mother's clothes, all the while wondering if Dev was spending her share of the stash. But she knew it would be worth her while. Seeing the plot in action again convinced her of that. One day the idiot went and burned his hand on the hob. Once more leafless stalks appeared in the plot. Once more there was a pod. This one was smaller and full of red goo. Thaddeus spread the stuff over the injury, and within the hour all signs of the burn, a pretty bad one at that, had gone. The nearest place to the cottage was a pub called the Lamb. It stood all alone on the road Skunk had driven along that day, about an hour's walk from the cottage. Thaddeus said he went there from time to time, but didn't much like being around people. The arrival of March brought a thaw and some early spring sunshine. She put on an extra pair of socks, pulled on a dead woman's walking boots, and set off for her first ever hike. The Lamb was one of those big, stone-built pubs that you were supposed to be impressed by, but she thought it was a shithole. No TV screens, no pool table, and only rock on the jukebox. She sat at the empty bar with her lager and waited for the landlord to pay her some attention. She didn't have to wait long.
"Good afternoon. Can't say I've seen you here before, young lady."
The oily, overweight idiot puffed his chest out, sucked his gut in, and gave her a leering smile. Yeah, well, I'm visiting a family friend. You know him? A guy called Thaddeus. His eyes widened.
"Thaddeus Mortlock? Now I would never have him down as one to have family friends. He barely leaves that cottage of his, all alone now since his mam died. Poor bloke. I feel sorry for him."
The landlord leaned closer and lowered his voice, despite her being the only customer.
"Not wishing to be rude, but he's not quite all there, if you get my drift."
She smiled and nodded. I worry about him, she said sweetly. I mean, how does he get by? The landlord shrugged.
"That's always been asked about the Mortlocks. None of 'em have ever worked. None of 'em have ever signed on the dole. None of 'em have ever had a bank account even, but they've always done just fine for themselves. It's caused rumours around here, I don't mind telling you."
Yeah? He nodded sagely.
"Oh, aye. Nonsense, of course. Stories of—"
He stopped himself and laughed in embarrassment. Son? Stories of what?
"Oh, all sorts. Pagan worship, black magic, dealings with the fairies, that sort of thing. I don't believe a word of it, mind. The Mortlocks have always been good folk, kind, always happy to help others. But you know what people are like. They should be more open-minded, if you ask me. Live and let live, eh?"
Oh, yeah. Live and let live. He leaned close again and gave her a knowing wink.
"But between you and me, I know the truth. I wouldn't worry too much about your friend Thaddeus. He'll not starve, that's for sure."
She met the fat fool's gaze and gave a coy smile. I would love to know, just to put my mind at rest, you know.
"Of course. You're a sweet girl."
He licked his lips and leaned closer still.
"Every year at about this time we get a commercial booking for a room here. Just one room for one night, year after year.
Yeah? And?
And it's come from a fancy London company. A high-end restaurant supply business. I mean really high-end."
Yeah? They come all the way up here? The landlord nodded.
"It turns out that they send someone up here to get the only white truffles sourced in the UK."
She frowned. Truffles? What? Chocolates? He laughed.
"Not that sort of truffle. The proper stuff. The fungus that grows under the ground."
Huh?
"Aye, it's a bit like an underground mushroom. Restaurants go wild for it, and white truffles are the ultimate. Very rare."
She pursed her lips. Rarer? So, are they worth a lot? He nodded.
"You would not believe it. More than their weight in gold. Literally. Now, a couple of years ago, I got the guy sent by this company drinking late. I kept the bar open just for him. It loosened his tongue up nicely. He told me all about it. For years now, one family has been supplying the best quality white truffles you can get your hands on.
The Mortlogs.
Got it in one. Nobody knows how. Truffles don't even grow in this country. They must have a secret supplier on the continent, but nobody knows who, and nobody knows why anyone in Europe would do business with a family of yokels way out here. But there you have it.
She took a big gulp of her lager. So, she said slowly, each year Thaddeus comes here to meet whoever this company sends.
And walks away with a suitcase of cash, like his mam did before him, like her dad did before her.
She nodded. You said it happens about this time of year.
I did. The room booking has already been made, for a week on Friday, as it happens. So don't you fret about your friend Thaddeus, little lady. He doesn't need to worry about money. Now, fancy another pint on me?
Tell me about the plot, Thaddeus. He paused from clearing away the evening's meal and looked at her blankly.
The plot provides.
Yeah, but... He seemed lost for words.
It gives what is needed, he manages eventually. That's what Mam always said, and Grandad. It has always given us what we need, as long as we've lived here. He paused. My family has lived here forever.
And every time you need something, it just grows there, right? He smiled and nodded. She smiled and nodded back. It was on the Wednesday morning, 2 days before some fancy Londoner would be checking in at the Lamb, when she saw the new stalks snaking up out of the black soil. The sun was shining and the birds were singing. Something about the day dredged up an old memory from her granddad's allotment. Yeah, the air smelled of spring, of sun on damp soil, of growth, of future promise. The stalks grew crazy fast and that evening delivered 5 fat pods. Thaddeus picked them. She watched as he took them through to the kitchen and split each one open in turn. He took out some soft, pale, spongy stuff and put it carefully into 5 large jars before screwing their lids shut. Her interest in what he was doing seemed to please him. He looked up at her and smiled.
The plot provides, he said.
With whatever you need, yeah? He nodded. She thought she had been dead quiet, but as she put the last jar of truffles into the bag, she heard a footstep behind her. There was just enough pre-dawn light to show Thaddeus standing in the kitchen doorway, hurt bewilderment on his idiot face. Sorry, pal, she shrugged. I'm the one that needs these.
But you can share them, he said. Stay here with me. I'll share it all with you.
She snorted. Sharing ain't my style, especially not with some pathetic retard. Now, shift. She snatched up the bag in one hand and the stove's poker in the other. He stepped in front of her.
No, don't go. Please.
I said shift, you worm! But he just gawped at her and stood blocking the way out. So she lashed out at him with the poker. He fell backwards and there was a loud crack as his head struck the door's stone step. He lay, very still and very silent, where he had fallen. Shit! She put the bag down and felt about it in the half-light for matches. She finally found some and lit the nearest lamp. The flickering light showed Thaddeus to be staring wide-eyed at the ceiling, a thick, dark pool of blood trickling down the step onto the tiled floor. Yeah, he was dead all right. She panicked for a few minutes, but then her mind started working. Nobody ever came here, and he hardly ever left the place. He wouldn't be missed for weeks, months maybe. But then she'd be rich and a long way away. All she had to do was stay calm. Get rid of the evidence. Heck, the guy was a moron. The pigs might not even bother looking for him. They'd just assume he had wandered off or something. She buried him in his precious plot, next to the already dead stalks that had somehow produced white truffles. It was hard work, dragging him outside and heaving him up onto the raised bed, but the black soil was soft and crumbly, easy to dig. She dug out a deep hole with the spade that stood propped next to the cottage, smelling once more the rich, damp bounty of springtime all around her. With Thaddeus disposed of, she scrubbed away every trace of his blood from inside the house. It took a while, as there had been a lot. By the time she was done, it was almost noon, and she was exhausted. She wandered outside for a breath of fresh air. 5 new stalks were poking up out of the plot. New stalks. But Thaddeus was dead. Then it struck her. She was the one that was left. The plot was going to give her what she needed. Whatever weird magic the Mortlock family had going on, they weren't here for it no more. It was all hers. She grinned and went back inside for a lie down. She drifted off to sleep, wondering what the plot would give her. Her money was on it being loads more white truffles for her to take to the lamb the next day. She woke up from her nap a couple of hours later. The new stalks were fully grown, each bearing a long, wide pod. Much bigger than any of the other pods she had seen. She tugged at one, but it wouldn't come off. Not ready, she guessed. She would just have to be patient. She went back inside and kept herself busy looking for, and eventually finding, Thaddeus's stash of cash, followed by picking out which of his belongings might fetch something. She checked the plot again that evening, only to be bitterly disappointed. The 5 pods had split open by themselves. Each was empty, just a brittle brown shell bobbing on a drooping stalk. They glistened inside with a ghostly silver that caught the last rays of sunshine. Useless bastard plot, with its useless bastard plants, raising her hopes like that and wasting her time. It seemed that plot was still giving Thaddeus what he needed, which was nothing. As nothing could help him now. Never mind, she had the white truffles. That would do her just fine. It was late in the day now. She decided to spend one last night in the cottage. She woke with a start. It was late at night, cottage pitch black and silent. The 5 fat, glistening, worm-like creatures had taken a while to find a way inside, eventually squeezing themselves through the letterbox. Now they had found her and were draped over her, held in place by their sticky, stinking mucus. Their first bites had both paralyzed her and numbed her, but even so the sensation of her flesh being torn away had jolted her awake. As she lay there, conscious but immobile, feeling herself being slowly consumed, her last cogent thought was that perhaps the plot didn't give what was needed. Perhaps it gave what was deserved.